Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Tailoring Your Trajectory. I'm Charlotte, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Lucy Grimwade. So let's jump right into today's episode. We're going to be talking about coaching as one of the tools that you can use to set yourself up for success. So today, our hope is that you're going to take away 3 things. Firstly, what coaching is and what it's not. Secondly, what to look for example, qualifications. And I'm going to draw on Lucy's experience to give you more information on that. And then lastly, benefits of coaching programs in the workplace. So let's dive right in. And as I've mentioned previously, I'm very lucky to be doing this project with somebody who is in fact a qualified coach. So Lucy, why don't you tell us what the good traits are for a really good coach?
Oh, I have a list in front of me around
sure
what
you do.
makes a good, if not great, coach. And just so you know, I think I have these traits as well.
Cool.
Just a bit of self-promotion there, Charlotte.
Nice.
The first trait I think that makes a great coach is being curious, curiosity. The whole concept of coaching falls around asking questions. So if you don't have that kind of curiosity kind of bone in your body, you're not going to ask great questions. You're not going to be asking those questions to get to a result and helping your client coachee move forwards. The next one I would feed into curiosity would be active listening. So as part of my training, I had at least 2 or 3 hours of training really on active listening. So that's not just listening to what somebody is saying, but the repeating what they're saying back, looking at their body language, picking up some of those key words as well. So active listening is another great trait.
Oh,
Great
nice.
trait. Ooh. To have. There's kind of 3 that kind of fall in together here as well, is confidentiality, trust, and integrity. So confidentiality is key. So when you're having a one-to-one or even a group coaching session with a qualified coach, you will always fall under the International Coaching Federation guidelines of it being confidentiality. So meaning that anything that you talk about with your coach or within the group, it doesn't leave those 4 walls.
And those
at all.
guidelines, that's something that you're aware of because you're a qualified coach. And I guess that you're subscribed to that as part of your qualification.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can send a link or put a link in
Yeah,
the
I think that
show
would be
notes for
really
that if you
interesting for
like.
our listeners.
Yeah. Trust. So knowing that somebody is going to be on the other end and you can trust them and open up to them and be there on the other end of the line to kind of share whatever you need to share. And integrity is also a really important trait to have. If you are the coach and you're working with paying clients, or even if it's just a client that you're doing pro bono, having the integrity of saying that you are going to do what you say you're going to do. So whether that's turning up on time, or maybe there's something that you've had within a conversation that's maybe a workbook that you might know of, or a podcast to listen to. After that session, always kind of sending that follow-up and making sure that you're there. Something else as well is around having a growth mindset. We actually talked about that in our last episode of mentoring, didn't we? Yeah. I think having a growth mindset is so incredibly important as a coach. And as part of my training, and you'll hear me refer back to my training all the time, it was with Full Circle Global, shout out to them. Something that our master coach taught us was that actually you're the instrument. So you are the kind of person that turns up, you're the instrument that plays the tune to kind of help people get to where they need to get to. And if you're not well tuned and you're not well looked after and you're not constantly learning and growing, then how can you deliver the best coaching? And that's something that's really stuck with me just professionally as well. So having a growth mindset, making sure you're learning constantly is there. Is there any other traits?
No, I was just going to say, I love that analogy around the instrument. I think that's great, and it actually applies to so many things.
Yeah, I love it. I use it all the time, like I say. Is there anything you would add to traits
I
of a
don't
coach?
think so. And I think what's really interesting is how similar those traits are to that of a good mentor. I think the real difference there is around the signing up to that confidentiality piece, which I didn't know about as somebody who's not a professional coach. So it's really interesting that you've got that guidance and those practices, but as a qualified coach.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's interesting that you're saying that, because you fall in these traps almost, don't you? Just because you know
Yeah,
it, you think other
absolutely.
people might know this stuff too. Because actually also the International Coaching Federation asks coaches as well to do certain other things. So one of them is that a coaching session should be no more than 60 minutes as well. And sometimes I go over the 60 minutes because sometimes you can't always cover what you need to cover in 60 minutes, especially if there's that kind of initial kind of, hi, how are you, etc. And then there's the wrap up at the end. And it also talks about being future focused and moving forwards. And they focus on that co-creation, collaboration as well, which I really, really like.
That's really cool. So when we were talking in the mentoring episode, I was describing an approach that I take. And you said, Charlotte, that's called transform. And that's actually a coaching technique model. Maybe you could share with us what that actually is officially, as opposed to the thing that I was just doing and not knowing it had that name.
Just look at you smashing out the park. I was so excited when you were talking about it. And when we watched the video back, it was just like my face was like, yes. So the transform model, really, in a nutshell, is building out a goal. So you start off by doing the wheel of life. Anything that I'm talking about right now, everyone, we will make sure it's in the show notes so you can go and have a look at this. So wheel of life, you do the wheel of life, which is split into 8 segments, and then you label those segments, and it could be anything that's to do with work, career, healthy lifestyle, all of those things there. From there, you then create a goal, and it's always more of an affirmation. So it's a bit like what you were saying in the mentoring. You kind of come along with a goal. So when you're doing the transform model, it is exactly that. You're building out a goal, but it's more of an affirmation. So my first one that I ever done was, I am confident in all aspects of my life. That was my affirmation. That was my goal. In the 6 to 12 months while I was doing the program, at the end of that program, I wanted to say, I am confident in all aspects of my life. And just so you know, I am. Sugar. And then from there, you build those kind of milestones, which could be, for me, some of them on there was to go and have like further coaching, taking more care of myself, networking. They were my milestones to reach. And then underneath those milestones, you then have actions. So underneath networking, for example, my actions were once a week or once a month. Once a week's probably a bit much, isn't it? Once a month, I would make sure I would attend a kind of networking call, or I would go and reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, etc., which built into my I'm going to network, which built into my bigger goal of I'm confident in all aspects of my life. And that there is a 30 seconds, probably more like 60 seconds, snapshot of transform.
Fantastic. Ta-da! And so for our listeners, is that something that a coach decides the model of, or is it something that's more collaborative?
Great question. I think it depends what the coach is qualified in. Most coaches would use the wheel of life. It's one of the kind of standard coaching models, but it depends what the client is coming to you for and what your kind of niche or speciality is.
Yeah.
Does
Do
that answer
you
your
have
question?
an example where you wouldn't use this approach at all?
Yes, which then I think would feed in quite nicely to our kind of coaching programs that we wanted to talk about. Yes. So you might use a transform model if you are thinking about wanting to make a real big change in your life. It's more kind of life changing. Whereas if you were maybe at work and had like a career related kind of goal that you wanted to work towards, there are other models out there, but most of it feeds into that, what I was saying right at the beginning about those curiosity and those questions. So a coach could pull from anything that they've got. And there's so many things out there. There's models where you just come along and it's all about active listening, understanding where that person is, deep diving into some of the words that they're using to build towards whatever that could be that they want to work on. There's also tools out there, and there's so many. I think maybe I'll have to compile a list of them and put them out there. Yeah, and I think it really depends on the client. And this is why another thing, and I'm trying to not get my bugbears too much out in this episode, which I know they are going to come. I know you're going to ask me about it, Charlotte, as well. Is that this is why I think it's so important to have a qualified coach, because they've got all the right techniques. And this is also why I don't like, and Charlotte and I both don't like, cookie cutter approaches, full stop. So when I see coaches out there who just say, I just do the transform model, well, that's not going to work for everyone, because somebody who, like I was saying, might come to the coach around more of a career related subject than a life-changing subject, even though coaching is life-changing. But sometimes you have to understand when it is appropriate to use the right model.
So we've talked a lot about the word qualified coach. Maybe it would be good to explain to everyone what to look for to know that you've got a qualified coach.
Okay, so this is me keeping myself calm with it. That's why I said, okay, that's to keep me calm. Qualified coach doesn't have to be with the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation. It could be the Association of Coaches, which is AC. You've got EMCC, which is European Mentor Coaching something. Apologies, can't remember the full bit there. Might be something along the lines of that. ICF, AC, EMCC. They are the three main bodies that you'll see out there. Oh, and there's also the ILM. I actually don't know what ILM stands for. Do you?
But we will find out, and we'll put it into our show notes.
We'll find out. Yeah, if you're working HR professionals have quite a lot of ILM accreditations. Those 4 qualifications there that I've mentioned are the ones you want to look out for. And the reason being, shall I go into the reason being? So I was thinking about how best to explain this without me getting on my high horse, as I normally do about it, was if you go to your hairdresser or your barber, you expect them and you would want them to have a qualification, or if they're junior, that you're aware that they're junior and they're currently studying to get their qualification to be a stylist, senior stylist, etc. A qualified or becoming qualified stylist, hairdresser, barber will know to, say if you dye your hair, for example, would do that patch test on you first before you go and have your hair dyed. A non-qualified hairdresser, stylist, barber might go and put this hair dye on you, and then you come out in a rash.
Nobody wants that.
And I think, and nobody wants that. And then worst of all, you go to somebody who perhaps hasn't got the right qualification and dyes your hair completely the wrong colour, and then you're having to go somewhere else to go.
Oh, you're giving me anxiety just saying that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just remember years and years ago when I lived at home, which is a very long time ago now. My mum went to a hairdresser's and she came back and her hair was just not the colour she wanted it to be, and she was so upset. And it turned out that it's because they had given her a hairstylist at the time who, even though was told to my mum that she was a junior and she was studying, actually turned out not to be the case. So it's very interesting that these, I'm using this kind of analogy here, and I think that's the best way to describe why I think it's important to have a qualified coach.
So you also talked about the junior, the training part. How many coaching hours do they need to have, and how should you know about that when you're looking for a coach? Because I guess it's all relevant to your price point as well. And so
absolutely,
I know coaching can be quite expensive. You've got executive coaching, and that's very pricey, but delivers good results. But everybody obviously has got their own ability to pay or an amount that they want to be able to pay. Sometimes a cheaper way of getting it is by going with somebody who's learning and needs to get coaching hours, right? So how do you find those people?
Can I just say, you mentioning that makes me so happy, because something that I always say in my content, and I put it out about coaching, is that, make sure that whatever coach you work with, it fits your budget. Because I think a lot of people feel pressured to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to work with a coach. And it upsets me, because actually, exactly what you're saying, you could work with somebody who is currently studying. You need 100 hours plus doing a 3-hour exam to be qualified as a ICF, International Coaching Federation, kind of associate coach. You need 500 hours to be a professional coach, and I think you need something like 1,000 or plus to be a master coach. Just giving you that for context. If you want to work with somebody who's doing their qualification, they should tell you. They might ask for your permission to record, because you also need to send 2 or 3 recordings in to them to be assessed. That's part of the assessment. They might have it on their website. Even if maybe in a conversation you might see it. I see a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I don't know about you, Charlotte, if you do as well, but I see a lot of people saying, I'm trying to build up my hours. I'll do a free coaching session with you, or I'll do your coaching session for the cost of a coffee.
So it's interesting you say that, because one of the earlier coaches I had was almost at her number of hours, and she put out into a network, that community that I'm involved with, that she had a few more hours that she needed to do. She was looking for 3 people. And it's at a discounted rate. And so I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go, because I hadn't experienced coaching, and I thought it's not that expensive. So actually, I guess it's a great way for her to learn, but also for me to test whether coaching worked for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have to start somewhere. When I started my coaching journey, you know this because we're friends, you know what I did when I was doing it? I was doing it for free. I was helping people out. I was very, very fortunate as well that because of the organisation I was currently working in and what I was doing for the women's network there, I was able to offer my coaching services and put them down as paid for, because I did it as part of my job. So that really helped me out. But honestly, there's coaching out there, and actually there's a Coach Me Free, I think is the website, and it's where people who are doing their qualifications go on there to get some hours, and then you can go through and read people's profiles and find some free
I think that's great. We should definitely add that to the show notes, because if you don't have a big budget and you're not sure that coaching is right for you, I guess that's a great way to try it for very little investment.
Yeah. I'm always a little bit concerned when I see coaches put out their prices and their crazy money, and I'm talking like 50, 60, 70,000 for one-to-one. So not business coaching. If you go and work with a business, of course you probably are, because at the end of the day, corporates have the money, you can charge that. But I'm always a little bit suspect about that. And I think if it doesn't feel right in your gut, for me, that doesn't feel right in my gut, I just don't do it. And if it doesn't feel right to you, if you're talking to coaches and it's not right for you, just don't. And actually, if I just quickly bring us back to the hairdressing as well, it does take you sometimes a few attempts, a few kind of haircuts to find the right hairdresser, the right stylist for you. So think about that on the concept of coaching as well. I don't know, Charlotte, if you've had that experience, but maybe you've worked with a couple of coaches and been like, oh, not sure, I'll go and work with this person.
Yeah, and I've also had introductory calls where I've been approached on LinkedIn for various executive coaching, and I've heard some of them out, and I think it varies. Some of them can be a bit pushy, and I think you have to be in the right headspace, and you want to make that right commitment, because there is a financial element to it, which is one of the differentiators, right, between mentoring, which is a voluntary thing, to being coached. And I think maybe that brings us on nicely to an alternative way of getting coaching that doesn't cost you as an individual anything, but costs a business something, which is actually coaching programs in the workplace.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this on the mentoring episode. There, you can set up mentoring schemes, but also an alternative in the workplace are coaching programs. And again, similarly to mentoring, they often drive retention, employee motivation, which then has an impact on customer satisfaction and profitability. And it's also good for the employer value proposition and talent acquisition to say, hey, we have a coaching program. And I think there's a real need for coaching in the workplace, in the right culture and the right environment. You know me, I love a stat. And Gallup have done a survey recently that found that only 25% of employees strongly agree that their managers provide them with valuable feedback. That's quite low. And
Gosh, that's low.
And I think that just proves that the need for either a mentoring program or a coaching program is super valuable. And I think then you look at something that SHRM did, which was a survey that found actually only 93% of managers, that's 93% of managers need training before feeling comfortable coaching their employees. As a manager and as a leader, you need to be able to naturally give that feedback and be able to coach. And as you've described through your professional qualification, there's a way of doing it. And the fact that so many managers feel that they haven't had that coaching experience or that training, and then you've got employees on the flip side saying they don't feel that they're getting or they're strongly agreeing that their managers don't provide them with that valuable feedback. I think that proves that maybe a coaching program in the workplace could be something of value. But what do you think the challenges are for having a coaching program in the workplace, Lucy?
I think it always comes down to culture. And I don't know how to sugarcoat it, really. I'm just going to come out with it. I think it's culture. It's kind of historical practice. This is what we've always done. We put people on these, the same old. Charlotte, you and I have managed teams, right? And the management training, I'm saying that in air quotes right now. How many times have you done like a management training course and it's just been about...
Never been on a management training course. I've managed
I think
many individuals of all levels. I've managed managers of managers, individual contributors, never had any training.
This is making me so cross. Makes me so cross. But actually, it also goes to show that I know you as a manager as well, and the things that you do and the things that you deliver, but I also know that you're dedicated to your personal development. So I know that you go and read books, etc., but not everybody is like you. Not every manager is like you. And the courses I've done have always been the same. It's always been about that triangle around trying to get people to kind of adult mode instead of kind of child or parent mode, right? All of those always has been those things. Yes, it's useful, but what about actually giving people the right tools to use to be able to have those difficult conversations and just flipping it around of being that kind of I'm doing a triangle here of like someone top down telling you what to do and flipping it over, which is called servant leadership, of kind of being like, well, what do you need? How can I help you? Well, what do you think needs to be done? And having that curiosity. And actually, we said this right at the beginning of the recording. We talked about having confidentiality and integrity and kind of the active listening. If you bring in a culture mindset, a coaching culture, and give people the right kind of coach training for managers or leaders, I think that, you're going to tick all of those boxes because whatever you're talking about is going to be confidential and/or doesn't always have to be like that, but just having a technique of going, okay, well, this is the project here. Well, what do you think we need to do? How do you think we need to deliver it? And just asking these questions instead of going, do this, do that, act like this, and it needs to be done yesterday. Oh, I got my soapbox.
Are you ready to step off?
Yes, I'm off the soapbox.
I absolutely agree with everything you said. And I think you didn't realise that I'd never had any line management training before. No. But I mean, for me, I, as you said, have gone out and invested in finding myself mentors. I've done the coaching thing. I read a lot. I listen to lots of podcasts. And there's one quote that sticks with me time and time again, and I say this to all my direct reports I've had over the years and to anybody I mentor. Nobody cares as much about your career as you do, which I think is part of the basis of why we started Tailoring Your Trajectory, right? Because everybody's career is unique and bespoke to them. And, there are some great things that can help set you up for success. And if your company does do a coaching program and it's something that you'd be interested in doing, you should absolutely, take that opportunity. Because not every company does them. Not every company does a mentoring program either. And you might feel more comfortable doing it internally, or you might feel you don't have the budget externally to have one. So it's a great opportunity. I think other challenges around coaching in the workplace is, we've talked about this a lot in terms of coaches outside of the workplace, but having unqualified coaches being the coach, having a lack of employee buy-in, because people don't really understand what that is. And maybe they think, oh no, they're just going to go back and tell my manager. And again, we touched on this in the mentoring thing, which is having that trust. And, you talked about it as a trait at the start of this episode. And then also the business just not prioritizing coaching. I think these can all be barriers to having a coaching program in the workplace too.
I think that's really well summarized from my soapbox moment that I had there. And I think it upsets me, because it's a really easy thing to implement, to do a bit of kind of development. It's not even training, it's developing your staff so they can then further develop their staff, for them to stay. Because Charlotte and I, sometimes we do have conversations about recruitment and the cost of it. And, when you lose somebody from a team and then you're having to recruit, just the cost and the time and the stress of it. But actually, if there was just and I feel like I'm demeaning it slightly, but if there was this coaching program or coaching mindset within a business, you could really shift and change the dynamic of your business. And I do think as well, you'd have a diverse business that'd be a lot more profitable as well.
And those are exactly some of the things that are put out there to businesses as to why they should set up their own coaching programs. So I feel like we've covered a lot on coaching. And I think if I just sort of summarize what I think the 3 kind of key takeaways are from what we've talked about. So I think the first one is, when you're looking for a coach, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Lucy, but I think what I heard was there were kind of 3 things. So one is around kind of like their qualification, and making sure that either they're qualified or that they are qualifying, and that they are transparent in terms of their results through things like testimonials. And then thirdly, that they are affordable and in your budget, and they don't push your financial means, and you find somebody that is, within your budget.
Yes.
Yeah, go
Can I add
it.
one other thing to it? And I haven't mentioned this in there. You don't have to do it straight away, but if you are going to invest in coaching, just ask them about their insurance.
Yes, that's very important.
Because that doesn't just, yes, for a coach, yes, I have insurance because it protects me, but it protects you as well. And when you read your contract, so you should always have a contract with your coach as well. If you're unsure about the contract that you've got, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to look over it for you. And or if you've got somebody that maybe knows a little bit more legal jargon, etc., have them to look over that too, if you feel unsure about it. I'm just
I think that's great. It's super valuable, because certainly when my experience of having coaches, I don't remember talking to them about insurance. I do remember having contracts, but I think, and that's also lovely that you've offered to give it the Lucy once over. Going back to takeaways, I think the other thing that we hope that we've left you with is how to go and find a coach, whether that is externally through directories or recommendations. And also, I guess on the recommendations thing, lots of people on LinkedIn and other communities will be able to give you recommendations on somebody they've worked well with. And certainly the coach I had that I worked really well with, I wrote them a recommendation straight away. And it wasn't a long-term thing. And again, a bit like mentoring, the relationship can vary in terms of length, which is probably also worth mentioning. But also you can find a coach through your workplace if there is a coaching program. And then lastly, I hope that we've also left you with, how do you know that you need a coach? And again, just emphasising the difference between what a coach will do for you versus